So we'll just introduce ourselves now, the team. So my name is Pranyamai, Jyotika is on the screen and Claire is there. So Jyotika, do you just want to introduce yourself first?
Sure, yeah. So hello. So I've a Buddhist name, obviously, Jyotika. It's not that common around the Rahini area where I live. And I was given that when I was ordained 20 years ago. So I've been practicing meditation and practicing within this Buddhist community since 1995. And yeah, I've been teaching for a long time, about 20 years. I get a lot from teaching, sharing, hearing from people. And I'm only going to be doing the first night of this course. So there's another guy, Rijamuni, who is due to do the course, but he's away on a retreat at the moment. So he'll be here next week. But anyway, very happy to be here just for one night. That's probably enough. Yeah.
Grant. Claire? Thanks, Jyotika. What does your name mean?
It's to do with light. Jyoti is to do with light, and Ka is one who is like. So illumination. And when you don't choose the names are given to you, and they're qualities that you have, but that you need to develop. And that's the kind of idea of the name. So sometimes when you think of your name, you think of, okay, so part of what I'm trying to do is develop these particular qualities. So illumination, clarity, that kind of thing.
Great. So Claire?
Hi folks, yeah, delighted to be helping out on the helping Pranyamai and Jyotika on the course, and if anybody has any queries or anything like that, please feel free to message via the chat or whatever. I've been going to the centre now for three and a half years, so that's it from me. Thanks, Pranyamai.
Great, thanks, Claire. So my name is Pranyamai, and that means she who is filled with wisdom. And as Jyotika said, it's the becoming of Pranyamai is my practice. So it's aspirational. I've been involved with this Buddhist movement for 20 years, over 20 years, and been fortunate to work in different ways in right livelihood, which is mentioned in Sangharakshita's Greater Mandala piece, and in campaigns around compassion, karuna, raising money for the Dalits in India. So I've very much experienced the active, and I was an activist for 20 years before that, so involved in conflict resolution. So I feel that this material here is wonderful because it's receptive, and it's just being, and it's opening. And I've done a lot of retreats in the last year on this theme, so it's great to be on this course. So yeah, so this course is really about going from concepts to the heart. So we're moving out of, so I don't know if you notice in your meditation when we sit down, a lot of the time we move to thought in the head. So we often can be like, heads with no body. So in order to be whole and connected, we become aware of our body, and if there's pain, tightness, energy, whatever, and it opens up into a greater feeling of expansiveness, potentially through meditation and through being with any connection outside, like the example of the tree with Sangharakshita. He was connected and was being with that tree and open. He wasn't looking for any use from the tree. So I suppose this whole area of beauty and how we see beauty, that aesthetic appreciation, So in this particular time of the year, so I'm going to mention this, we're in autumn, which is a time of great beauty, and a time when walking the colors of gold, the colors of, gold and orange and rust and green, they're all out there. And the moon is shining in a very illuminating way at the moment. So it's to be conscious, personally for myself, that is where I open into this aesthetic appreciation. For yourselves, it can be music, art, whatever it is. So the course is really opening and allowing us to sit back and be with what it is. And a good part of this course is just sitting, looking out the window. I just had a conversation about that, and it was hard to do for me. This person was saying, because I always want to be doing something. So we notice, we stay curious, we come on the journey and see what happens. So that's all I'm going to say about that. So moving from the words to the wordless. So in terms of our preparation ourselves, so it's good to commit and come to the course. And it doesn't. So if you can't make it, it'd be great if you could tell me. I'm going to put my email there, and Claire's going to have it available. So if you could just email and say, "Hey, listen, I'm not going to make next week's course or the week after." That's great. So we get a sense of we are in this mandala, our sacred circle in time and space, connecting together the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, and we are taking care of each other. So that would be great. We're going to have groups, because groups will be a point where you can share your practice. So whatever's happening week to week, you meet up with maybe 4, depending on how many people there are, 4 or 5 people, and connect every week and check in, reporting what's going on. This opened for me, and this music, this nature, whatever it is. So that will be really important to do that. So in the groups for this evening, what we're going to do is just have you say your name and why you're here, basically, why you've taught the course. So it's an introduction to each other. So that's what we will do in a second. Let me see any other practical stuff that I missed. So anything else I can pick up afterwards, but we want to get into the groups now for 15 minutes, and when Claire is ready, we'll get started with that. So we have 15 minutes, so it'll be till 5 to 8.
Okay.
Can I just ask, Pranayamaya, so there's 15 minutes. So it's just, is there anything else you want people to talk about? Just because we could have about 2 minutes each if we divided it up that way. Just what else?
Well, it depends. So at this stage, I'm not quite sure what the numbers are, but if we have 4 people in the group and we have 15 minutes, that'll give us more time. So I think with that, we could say what experience we have of meditation, sitting practice, what moves our hearts, what makes our hearts sing, is it going to a concert? Unfortunately, we can't go to many of them, or listen to music, or is going for a walk. Silence, how are we about silence? How are we about listening to others, how connected we are? There's aesthetic appreciation or connection in all of that, and anything else you want to say, but don't be too worried about covering all of that. Mostly what I wanted to do is to introduce yourselves and say why you're here, basically. So I don't want really to talk anymore, because I want you to have the time in your groups.
Okay, I've got the group set up. So it's 4 groups of between 4 and 5 people for 15 minutes, and I'm opening them now. Thank you. Yeah,
and any clarifications we could deal with later. Okay, any questions you have, any of that.
Yeah, can I just get a wave or a show of a hand of those who have never meditated before? Okay. Oh, there's one. Ivan. All right. So this is all pretty new then, I guess, for you. So we'll go easy on you, or as easy as we can. There will be meditations throughout the course, and you'll pick stuff up if you want to do an actual specific meditation course. The centre does offer those, so just keep an eye on the program. You'll be fine with this course, but to go that bit deeper into meditation and what it's all about and how to do it, there are specific courses. So just keep an eye on the program. So this course then is we're looking at just a particular aspect of the Buddhist tradition and the Buddhist teaching, and an aspect of meditation. So meditation is very, very central to the Buddhist path, the Buddhist tradition, and we're looking at a particular aspect of it on this course. So as Pranayamaya was saying, this community that we're involved with, myself, Pranayamaya, Claire, others who are here, the Triratna community was started by an Englishman called Sangharakshita, who went to India in the Second World War. And after the Second World War, he stayed on. And he's remained there for just over 20 years. And he got ordained into the Theravadan tradition, which is the shaven head monks wearing the yellow robes. And then he moved up into the Himalayas, and he lived in a place called Kalimpong, and he met lots of Tibetan lamas and Rinpoches that were moving down after the Chinese invasion in the 50s. So he got to know a lot about the whole Indo-Tibetan tradition as well. And then he came back to Britain, and he felt that there was a real hunger and need and interest in Buddhism back in the West and in London at that time. This is the late 60s. So he started up the Triratna community, and it's been growing ever since. And there's been a centre and a community here in Ireland, Dublin, for about 30 years now. Yeah. Okay, so back in the 70s, Sangharakshita, the guy who started the community, he gave a lot of talks and a lot of lectures and gave a lot of seminars over the years. And he gave one in the 70s called the Greater Mandala. And he wanted to look at the wisdom tradition in Buddhism. And so Buddhism has taken on loads and loads of different expressions over the centuries. So it started with the Buddha himself, who was around about 2,500 years ago. And the Buddha gave particular teachings to his followers at the time, many of which we still practice today. So like the mindfulness of breathing meditation, the Metta Bhavana meditation, and then other things like the Four Noble Truths, the Noble Eightfold Path, these teachings, if you've heard of them, the 10 precepts, 5 precepts. So these are still very, very common teachings and practices, very central in many, if not most, Buddhist traditions today. In the centuries after the Buddha's death, his teachings then were developed further by his followers, partly depending on where what's called the Dharma, which is his teachings, where it ended up, what part of the world it ended up. So it tended to then mix with the indigenous culture at the time, and new flowerings of his teachings emerged. And a lot of this was really, really good. But in some cases, some of the teachings became overly complicated and scholastic. very conceptualized. So reasonably quickly, within a few hundred years, the Buddhist community in India formed very strong monastic settlements. And some of these grew into large-scale monasteries, the most famous of which was a place called Nalanda in northeastern India. And that at the time had over 10,000 students at it. So the ruins of Nalanda are still extant. It was overrun by Muslim invaders in about the 9th, 10th century, something like that. But it was a very, it was a very, very big institution. And as the academic mind is wont to do, the thinking and the conceptualizing and the reasoning behind some of the teachings got very, very sophisticated and very, very complex. And some of that suited those with a very scholastic, intellectual orientated kind of mind, but the Buddhist teaching was very, very geared towards everyone, regardless of caste or class or sex or age or wealth. So a kind of a counter, almost like a reformation in Buddhist terms, happened. This happened on a number of occasions particularly in Indian Buddhism, for the first, say, about 1500 years of the tradition, where a new movement grew up in reaction to what was seen as the stagnation of the tradition or aspects of the tradition. So one of the first big ones that happened, kind of a reaction, was a whole tradition that was based around the perfection of wisdom literature. So these were teachings, sutras, they are called, affiliated initially to a very famous Indian teacher called Nagarjuna. And they were an attempt to challenge the over-conceptualization that had grown up within the Buddhist tradition. And what the perfection of wisdom teachings and literature and practices aimed to do was to cut through concepts and cut through language effectively, but using language to do that. So using truths or using concepts just as a springboard into deeper truths. Okay, so you can get some of this stuff. There's different lengths of these teachings, these sutras, perfection of wisdom sutras, and you can get them online. You can get some of a lot of Nagarjuna stuff online, and it's often using paradox and negations juxtaposed beside affirmations, and then another negation. And it's just getting your mind using concepts, but in a way to go beyond concepts. It's a bit hard to explain. You kind of need to have the experience. But just bringing it back down to our own experience a little bit, I mean, we can see some of this dynamic in our own lives, particularly in our lives today, which are so different to how things would have been back in the 7th, 8th, 9th century India. Our lives are we're so bombarded with information and stimulation, digital, electronic in particular. And we can hear something or learn something useful, some kind of a teaching, maybe meditation, some kind of a skill. But over time, it can get quite complicated in our minds. And sometimes we just need to cut through complexities and come back down into something much more simple and much deeper in a way. So an example that's given is just when we're children, we feel things and see the world quite positively and in a very simple kind of terms. But then as life gets older, things get more complicated. So it's not to romanticize childhood. It's not that that's what we're looking for, but there's a quality of seeing and taking things in childhood, a sense of wonder. And with meditation, with Dharma practice in general, we're trying to rehabilitate some of that in our experience, in our life. So perhaps we come to a Buddhist center, do a course online, and we're learning to meditate. And in this learning, it actually allows us to cut through some of the complexities of being an adult and lets us just simply appreciate the beauty of the breathing body or the beauty of a tree swaying in the wind. You know, these simple kind of things. It can be hard to get to this place because we're so now overlain with the need to do and the need to plan, and so much of our life is now geared towards the acquisition of experience or the acquisition of objects. And then so much of our time is spent planning how to acquire objects and experience. Right? So it's a big shift that we're having to do just to get into something more simple and just appreciate things for what they are in their own terms. So the perfection of wisdom tradition came along, and it tried to, in a sense, in a macrocosmic way, cut through these layers of complexity that had affected and stultified the Buddhist community. So Sangha actually, in the lecture that he gave, the Greater Mandala, he starts off with one of the texts called the Ratnaguna Samchaya Gatha. Okay, and that's translated as the verses on the accumulation of the precious qualities of the perfection of wisdom. And this text is very much in line and is emphasizing what the Buddha himself said. So he said his teaching was beyond the sphere of reasoning. Okay? So he said his teaching was beyond the sphere of reasoning. Now, he didn't say that reasoning is unimportant and concepts are unimportant. He really, really didn't say that. Reasoning and concepts are essential in making sense of life and getting on in life. Okay? But he said what he taught was beyond reason and concepts. Okay, was beyond them. So there's a good book by a guy who's in the Triratna community called The Art of Reflection, which I'd recommend if you want to look it up. And he writes about the word beyond, and in this context, beyond reasoning. What does it mean here? And he says, well, it can be interpreted in a couple of ways. So we usually use beyond in the sense of leaving something completely behind. So if you're lost, you're walking in the countryside and you're not too sure how to get to your destination, and you meet a farmer and he says you go through his field and then beyond his property in the next field and through the woods, and then you come to the village. Okay. So you go beyond his property. Okay. And then you go through the woods and you come to the next village, and then you're at your destination. But it can also mean being more than just that thing. So for example, the farmer says that his land extends beyond the hilltops visible over there and further down into the valley on the other side. Okay. So it's beyond but you're bringing the beyond with you, if you kind of get that. So his land extends beyond the hilltops. It's not just on these hilltops, it's beyond these hilltops. So you're going over the hilltops, that's where you want to go, but you're still on his land. You're still kind of bringing the land with you in a sense. So it's in that sense that they're using beyond here, beyond reasoning, beyond concepts. It's not that you're leaving reasoning and concepts behind, but you're going beyond them, beyond just the sphere and scope that they can encompass. So the Buddha's insights included and encompassed the rational, but went beyond them too. And they're just large elements of his experience. And he says, and our experience too, if we practiced enough and gained what's called insight, that you're never going to be able to express logically in words. Okay? So we need the rational. And, you know, apart from through reasoning, allowing us to be here tonight, we also have all these views that we carry with us. A lot of them we're really not sure what they are, or we don't realize what a hold they have on us, and also how they can stifle our lives and bring us difficulty and pain. And having clarity and clear view, right view as it's called in the tradition, samyak drishti, helps us to clear up what views and deeper concepts and ideas we have about the world. It helps us to clear up these and bring clarity to them. Okay? But ultimately, the Buddha's insight goes beyond this area. So Ashvaghosha, who's a great Indian teacher, some centuries after the Buddha, and a great scholastic actually, he says that we use words to go beyond words into the pure wordless essence. So you get this again and again in the tradition, that the essence of experience, the essence of reality, it's wordless, it's ineffable. You can't give expression to it through language or through concepts or through ideas. Okay. So a problem for many of us today is that we are just so busy and we're caught in this matrix of thinking, of planning, of reasoning. You know, it's so habituated in us now from the time we're kids that we don't really notice it until it flips into something that we can't control. And then it can become a real problem. So we will look at this stuff as the course goes on, this whole area, and we can use the groups just to have a bit of a look at this in a little bit. And looking at, well, how can we undo this tendency, this habitual thing that we're doing, and we're all doing these days. So Sangharakshita, he had just in this talk 3 suggestions. We practice silence on a regular basis. We practice meditation on a regular basis, and we practice mantra on a regular basis. So with silence, when we stop voicing our thoughts, our thinking becomes less busy and more illuminating. Okay? And now that's kind of, initially it mightn't actually. I'm reading these notes here. And initially it mightn't actually. It might feel that we're really getting bombarded. But if we build up momentum and build up a practice of this, turning devices off for periods during the day, taking time just to go for a walk, stare out a window, sit in a chair, just for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, it does start to build into your life, into your day, into your experience, a time when you're not just yada, 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 ba, 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 or soaking information in, okay? You're just letting things settle. So it's something just to consider. How could you introduce more silence in your day? What's it feel like, the idea to introduce more silence into your day? Is it something that excites you, scares you? Well, you can explore this in your groups. I went on a solitary retreat, so it's a thing meditators often do, go off into the countryside for a period of time and just turn off devices and get into meditation and being in the nature and maybe doing whatever, exercise, yoga, whatever. And when I was first there, I decided every day I'm just going to sit in the chair a couple of times and just stare out the window. And when I first arrived, the first few days, I was doing it, but I could only do it for a few minutes. And then it was like a compulsion. I had to pick up a book and just start reading. But as the retreat went on, the days passed. I was there for about a week. But in the last 2 or 3 days, I could sit and stare out the window for half an hour. And I just felt very, very content. And it was such a lovely feeling. It was really, really lovely feeling. Anyway, but how does that, how does that land with you? The idea of just staring out the window for a few minutes, turning things off. Yeah. So then meditation, so concentrating on something tangible, something physical, like the breath and the mindfulness of breathing. And this can help us develop a whole awareness that is not caught up in conceptual thoughts and reasoning and planning. Okay. And it's not just developing awareness, kind of cold clinical awareness. It has to be warm and real and connected awareness. That's why the metta bhavana practice, the development of loving kindness, is so important. Okay. So that's meditation. Now it sounds like most of you know how to meditate or have a meditation practice, but again, we'll look and develop this as the weeks go by. And then there's mantra. So the mantra, the interesting thing about mantra in this context is that it gives us something to think of rather than having something to think about. Okay, because mantra doesn't have a meaning in the ordinary sense. And you just keep repeating the mantra. It's like it allows that aspect of the mind, reasoning, conceptualizing aspect of the mind, just to latch on to something rather than trying to figure something out. Okay. But just to go back to this idea of awareness not being cold, it's not detached kind of awareness. The Buddha saw with warmth and feeling and love. So he saw things as beautiful. And when we get past our ideas and our concepts of things and people and really experience those things and people in and of themselves, this is nearly always quite a beautiful thing. There mightn't be fireworks going on. It might be quite subtle, but there is a sense of other and a sense of beauty with that, which can be quite joyful. And it's our mental states that cause us to see things as ugly when we're not in a loving state, when we're in a hateful state, for example, or we're in a really craving, real state of craving. The world can seem really ugly, yeah. And we're, again, in meditation, we're just trying to counteract and work against these tendencies. So to bring in more awareness and appreciation, receptivity, positivity. Yeah. Okay. So we're going to break into our groups again. We'll just break in for, say, 12 minutes. And then we'll come back and just use the groups then just to, you can share what's it like when you kind of, you're overwhelmed by excessive thinking. What effect does that have? What does that feel like? How do you behave? Yeah. And then just exploring ideas of how you can begin to undo this. How does a practice of silence over the next 4 or 5 weeks land with you? Just sitting in the chair, not doing anything, looking out a window for a few minutes every day, maybe trying to increase it. How does meditating every day, deciding to just commit to meditating, sitting every day? Or how does just going into the countryside or into a park and sitting on a park bench and just looking at a tree or watching the birds or the clouds for 10 minutes and not doing anything? How does that all sound? Or if there's anything else you think you might like to do that you think you can counteract this momentum that we're all struggling with in our technologically advanced world. Okay, so and then we'll come back. So Claire, if you'd like to break us up into the groups again.
Yeah.
We'll
Okay.
we'll come back in 12 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Give you the title now. No, joking. So yeah, this week then it's the practice involves mindfulness of mental states and our tendency to conceptualization. Okay, so what we suggest you do is each day take note of each of these and record some of your observations. Okay, so get a journal if you don't have one. So concepts manifest strongly in the stories we're telling ourselves. Okay, so we're always telling ourselves stories all the time, okay, about our future, about our past, who's doing what to whom, to us, okay, what we need to do to get more pleasure, avoid more pain, okay? So we're always telling ourselves stories. So you could even, if it feels appropriate, just set a timer in your watch or something, or a little reminder, but stop a couple of times a day and just ask yourself, what story am I telling myself here? What story is running through my mind now? Okay. And how is it coloring my day? Is it coloring it positively or negatively? So something happens in work, the story you're telling is it was your fault, you're a bad person, you always mess up in these situations. So that's the story you're telling. So what effect does that have on you? Okay, and it's good to have pen and paper and do that. You know, just write it down. Again, it could be just 2 or 3 sentences. It just helps to bring clarity to it. So the next thing is try to meditate each day, even if it's just for 10 minutes. Ideally, it's for at least 20 minutes, but even just for 10 minutes, try to do it every day. And then alongside that, if you can, have a few minutes of silence each day. So turning off phones, not listening to music, not reading, Okay, just doing nothing, sitting, being receptive, looking out a window, sitting in a park. Sitting outside actually can be really good, particularly if you struggle with anxiety or restlessness. Just sitting, and if that sometimes is too much, you can walk really slowly in a park, and actually, you can do it really slowly, and people don't kind of notice how slowly you're walking, but you can actually, because I do it quite a bit. I walk very slowly. I was walking down St. Anne's Park today, and I just felt into my energy, and I just slowed right down, really slowed right down. But you walk and you're in nature, and it's nice, but you're really coming into your physical experience. So that can be a nice thing to do. Yeah. Okay. And then finally, notice what brings joy in your life, and if it opens you to more beauty. So what brings joy into your life, and if it opens you to more beauty, both in other people and the world around you. Okay, so there's 4 things. This should be in an email that gets sent out tomorrow. So stop a couple of times a day and just ask yourself, what story am I telling myself here? And how's it coloring my experience? Try to meditate each day. Try to have a few minutes of silence each day, sitting in a chair, looking out a window, walking slowly in a park, and then noticing what brings joy to your life, what opens you to beauty, both in other people and the world around you.